16 years of marriage ended with a single cold piece of paper left on the kitchen counter. No warning, no real explanation, just a sentence that felt like a slap to the face. "You're just a useless wife, Lily. I'm tired of carrying everything." I stood frozen, the wrinkled divorce papers in my hand, watching him put on his blazer. A strange cologne clung to his collar. It hit me harder than his words. "I'm Lily Clark, 42 years old. A devoted wife, discarded without mercy by the man I once believed was the love of my life. My husband, Tyler, had been planning this exit for a long time. I had just been too blind or too naive to face the truth. I'm moving out tonight. Aurora already set everything up for me," he said. He smiled, a smile colder than an Iowa winter. Aurora. I had heard that name many times before, but I never imagined it would show up like a dagger in the chest of my marriage. A rising fitness trainer in Cedar Rapids, only 28, with a feed full of revealing Instagram photos and thousands of followers. She didn't bother hiding that she was Tyler's new woman. On the contrary, they flaunted everything as if I'd never existed. Then he leaned in slightly, voice dripping with condescension. "I know you won't survive without me, Lily, so don't waste your time pretending to be strong." My hands trembled as I gripped the paper, but inside I felt frozen. I didn't cry, at least not yet. He tossed the house keys on the table like garbage, picked up his suitcase and walked out. It was packed with brand new clothes, the expensive cologne, and the laptop I had saved up for months to buy so he could work from home. "And don't call me. By the time you realize you need me, it'll be too late." The door slammed shut, leaving me in the cold silence of the kitchen. The ticking wall clock echoed like a heartbeat in my chest. I dropped into a chair, took a deep breath. The smell of the cold coffee I brewed that morning made me nauseous. Tyler always believed I couldn't live without him. For years he crafted this image of the hard-working husband carrying the family, while I was just the weak, stay-at-home wife who cooked, cleaned, and cared for the home he once called our sanctuary. I used to admire Tyler. We met when I was 26, working at a little bookstore in Des Moines. He was an ambitious insurance agent full of promises, big houses, trips to Miami, and a future where I would be the happiest woman alive. And I believed him. I believed him when he convinced me to give up my dream of opening a small bakery so he could focus on his career. I believed him when he told me I should stay home more, to be his solid foundation. And now, after all his so-called success, I, the woman who stood behind him every step of the way, was tossed aside like an outdated appliance. I picked up my phone, staring at the last message he sent. "I'll stop by this weekend to grab the rest of my stuff. Hope you've cleared it for me." My heart turned colder with every word I read. Tyler thought I'd fall apart, that I'd beg him to come back, that I'd become some pitiful shadow unable to live without him. But what he didn't realize was I was no longer the naive girl from 16 years ago. And his arrogance would soon be the biggest mistake of his life. I still remember clearly, about 6 months before it all collapsed, something in Tyler shifted. He suddenly became driven. He started waking up an hour before me to run outside in the freezing February air in Iowa. Then he'd shower with cold water and make green smoothies using the same blender he used to mock as hipster junk. At first, I was happy. After 2 years of pandemic-induced burnout, Tyler had spent most days slouched on the couch with video games and fast food. So seeing him get back into a routine, exercising, eating better, it gave me hope. I even bought him new running shoes using the year-end bonus from my 3rd-grade teaching job. He didn't thank me, just said, "This brand doesn't last long, but I guess it'll do for now." I brushed off the indifference, assuming it was work stress. Then one day I walked into the bathroom and saw an expensive serum neatly placed on the shelf. It wasn't mine. I don't use that brand. I also don't know anyone named Ray, the name that appeared on the email confirmation sent to our shared inbox. I asked Tyler. He shrugged. "Probably a wrong order. No big deal. Why are you making it into one?" I said nothing more, but from that day I started noticing. Tyler changed colognes. Now it was deep, musky, expensive, the kind sold in boutiques I'd never set foot in. He started wearing slim-fit shirts, the very style he used to mock as wannabe gym bro wear. He followed younger fitness influencers online, even made a TikTok account to watch some form videos, as he put it. I wasn't naive. I started feeling uneasy. Every night, He claimed to have late meetings or team dinners with clients, something that had never happened more than 3 times a year before. One night, I asked gently, "You're not having dinner at home?" Tyler snapped back immediately. "Controlling again, huh? You know, confident women don't ask questions like that." That line hit me like a slap. I stayed quiet, but something inside me began to crack. He stopped asking how my day went at school, how the kids were, or if I was tired. Instead, he became more critical. "You wore that dress to parent-teacher night. Doesn't look very professional. Have you considered taking skincare more seriously? Honestly, your face looks really dull lately." "What kind of wife still uses an outdated phone like yours? I told you to upgrade, stop being so cheap." Every morning, I found myself staring in the mirror, the faint lines around my eyes, my hair a little dry from years of coloring, my hands calloused from gardening and scrubbing floors. I never thought these were flaws, until my husband treated them that way. One evening while he was in the shower, I quietly checked his phone. There were no suspicious messages, he'd deleted everything. But in his photo album, I found a selfie that wasn't his. A brunette woman in gym clothes, taken in my living room. I froze. There was no mistaking it. The beige sofa, the hand-stitched pillow I placed, the wall art I spent an entire evening aligning. That was my home. She had been there. I said nothing. I still held on to a fragile hope that maybe I was imagining things. But when Tyler started talking about needing to upgrade the car for a more professional image, or trying international travel with people who know how to live well, I knew I was being pushed out of the world I had helped him build. I was the one still driving a 10-year-old sedan, still wearing simple linen dresses to teach, still buying discounted milk during weekend grocery sales. And apparently, to Tyler, that was no longer enough. I still remember that afternoon when I found a receipt tucked inside the laundry Tyler sent for dry cleaning, a thin piece of paper that felt like a bucket of cold water thrown in my face. The billing address? A luxury apartment in East Village near the Des Moines River, the kind of place we once dreamed of but never dared consider because it was outrageously expensive. The name on the bill? Not Tyler. Aurora Hale. I stood frozen in the laundry room, trying to rationalize everything, but there was no explanation that didn't point to one painful truth. He was living a second life with another woman, and using my money to do it. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account, a habit I had long abandoned because Tyler insisted he'd handle it to keep things simple. But this time, I needed to see for myself. And I did. Over the past 7 months, nearly $9,400 had been withdrawn in small amounts. The transactions were labeled things like water heater maintenance, tire replacement, sofa cleaning service. But I knew for a fact we hadn't changed the tires. And I had personally cleaned that sofa 3 weeks ago with vinegar and baking soda. The deeper I dug, the more stunned I became. A series of transfers to an account ending in 86, not with any bank we used. That account showed charges for things like a Tiffany & Co. order over $1,200, a payment at a high-end athletic store in Chicago, and even a receipt from a boutique home decor shop I'd never heard of. I printed everything, stacked the statements neatly in a plastic file folder. Even then, a part of me hoped it was all a mistake. But then I saw the confirmation email for a Capital One credit card, one I never applied for, but that listed both our names. When I called customer service, the woman on the line calmly explained. The card had been opened 3 months ago with Tyler as the primary holder. I was only an authorized user. He had used it to pay for a 3-night stay at a resort in Wisconsin. We had never taken any trip to Wisconsin. I remember laughing, not because it was funny, because I was too stunned to feel anything else. Tyler always claimed he was the only one who knew how to save. He once berated me for buying a new sheet set during a Black Friday sale. And now here he was, spending our joint savings, money I'd carefully set aside from every teaching paycheck to prepare for furnace repairs or roof leaks, on another woman, living in a Riverview apartment. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I sat at the table, surrounded by bank papers, occasionally glancing at the vase of tulips, the only thing Tyler ever brought home for me without needing to be asked. Around 10 p.m. I called my sister, Rachel. She arrived 20 minutes later, with a cold pizza and a bottle of soda. We sat across from each other. Rachel flipped through the statements in silence. Then she looked up and said, calmly, "Do you want to forgive him or end it?" I stared at the pile of papers. "I want to know what else he's hiding." Rachel nodded. "Then take tomorrow off. I'll help." The next morning I called the school and took 3 days off. Rachel and I went to the bank and asked them to review every transaction linked to any account Tyler had touched. A banker named Monica leaned in and whispered while Rachel stepped out for coffee. "I probably shouldn't say this, but you're not the first woman to come in here with something like this. You're doing the right thing." I clenched my fists. That night, Tyler texted me, "Don't forget to pay the internet bill." I transferred my share. I didn't reply. I had already frozen the account. And that was only the beginning. The next morning I went to the attorney's office Rachel recommended. A small, modest building in the suburbs, nothing flashy, but the nameplate on the door gleamed. Clara Simmons, divorce and women's financial protection attorney. Clara was in her early 50s with salt and pepper hair and a calm, steady voice. She didn't ask many questions, just listened while I laid everything out. The receipt from East Village, the suspicious transfers, even the secret credit card I never knew about. When I placed the thick folder of bank statements on her desk, Clara gently pushed her glasses up her nose and flipped through the pages. No one said a word for nearly 10 minutes. Finally, she looked up. "Lily, if what you're telling me is accurate, we're looking at a pattern of financial abuse. And there's a lot we can do with this." I sat up straight, feeling it was the first time in weeks I didn't feel completely alone in this fight. "First step," Clara continued, "you need to separate your finances completely. Open a personal account under your name only. Cut all ties to joint accounts. I'll file an emergency freeze with the bank by this afternoon." Rachel drove me to the Chase branch near our neighborhood. A teller named Angela helped me set up a personal account, enabled 2-step security alerts, and even walked me through how to use the banking app on my phone. I can tell you're meticulous with expenses," she smiled. "Now it's time to use that to protect yourself." I thanked her and left the bank feeling like I'd stepped through a new door in my life. That night, I began reviewing old bills I'd kept over the years. An old teacher's habit. Utility payments, home insurance, car registration. And then I found something that made me bolt upright from the couch. A separate garage lease agreement at Westcourt, about a 20-minute drive from our house. I had no idea we even leased a garage there. The next day, Rachel and I drove to the address. I used Tyler's name and ID number on the contract to request access. The manager hesitated at first, but when he saw my name listed as co-signer, he agreed. As the steel door rolled up, I froze. Inside was a brand new Ducati, a full set of motorcycle gear, and several boxes with tags still on them, from jewelry and athletic stores. Tyler had never mentioned owning a motorcycle. In fact, he always claimed to hate speed. I took photos of everything and sent them to Clara right there in the lot. She replied in less than 10 minutes. "Excellent. We're building a solid case. Don't tell him anything." The more I investigated, the clearer it became that Tyler had carefully disguised these expenses under innocent-sounding categories: client lunch, fuel costs, charitable gift. But when I compared the credit card transaction locations with GPS data, they all traced back to the area near Aurora's apartment. One night, while checking our Amazon statements, I noticed an odd order: a luxury Olaplex hair care set nearly $300 shipped to a different address. Curious, I Googled it. The result: Aurora Hale, personal training, business listing. He was using our shared Amazon account to send gifts to someone else, paid with the Prime subscription I covered each month. I let out a bitter laugh, then changed every password and canceled every shared service: Spotify, Netflix, HBO Max. I removed his name from all of them, no warning, no drama, just a few clicks and silence. The next morning, Tyler texted, "Is something wrong with the Netflix account? It kicked me out mid-show." I looked at the message and said nothing. That's when I knew I was on the right path. I was no longer the woman hunched over the dinner table wondering what she'd done wrong. I was piecing together a full portrait of betrayal, of disrespect, of deliberate deception. And this time, I would be the one to decide how the story ends. I left the house Tyler and I had shared for 12 years on a quiet, rainy morning in March. I didn't take much, just a suitcase, a few old teaching books, and some picture frames left on the shelf. Most of the rest I left behind. Letting go made it easier to breathe. Rachel let me stay in her attic apartment in Beaverdale, small but warm and more peaceful than any corner of that scarred-up house I'd once called home. 3 days later, I started applying for jobs. Teaching would take time to get back into, and I needed income now. I submitted applications to admin offices, pharmacies, even a couple grocery stores. Eventually, a small software company in downtown Des Moines called me in for an interview for a customer service position. They needed someone patient, a good listener, and organized. All things I had in abundance. I got the job. The pay wasn't high, $17 an hour before taxes, but it was enough to start over. I learned how to use their internal system, practiced data entry through YouTube tutorials at night, and slowly got used to the new names in my inbox. Funny thing, I hadn't realized before that the company's building was one I'd passed many times without noticing. What I didn't know, or never bothered to pay attention to, was that the 12th floor belonged to Axis Financial, the same insurance firm Tyler used to work for. 1 week into the job, I was waiting for the elevator when the doors opened, and there he was. Tyler. He wore a white button-down, a navy tie, and carried a leather briefcase. Standing next to him was Aurora, in a fitted beige dress, her hair softly curled, heels clicking across the marble floor. She looked startled to see me. Tyler froze for about 3 seconds before forcing a strained smile. I gave a slight nod. Not a word. The elevator was so quiet you could hear the breathing. Tyler spoke first, trying to sound casual. "Oh, Lily, didn't expect to see you here." I looked him straight in the eyes. "I work on the 6th floor, customer support. What about you?" He let out a half-hearted chuckle. "Just a meeting with a client, nothing important." Aurora looked like she wanted to say something but stayed quiet. The elevator stopped. I stepped out first without looking back. That night, I told Rachel. She didn't say much, just nodded and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "You finally faced him and you didn't flinch, not like before." I smiled, a smile that, for once, wasn't bitter. In the weeks that followed, I poured myself into work. My manager, Ben, a man in his early 40s, noticed how organized I was and how well I tracked progress. One day he approached my desk and asked, "Lily, you're very systematic. What kind of work did you do before this?" I honestly told him about my years as a teacher and the recent period where I had to manage all my personal finances on my own. He smiled and gave me a thumbs up. "We actually need someone to review our internal expense reports. If you've got time, I'd love to assign you a few. You might enjoy it." I nodded, and in the hours that followed, surrounded by Excel sheets and budget reports, I realized something. I still had it. Not everyone saw me as the useless wife Tyler had tried to convince me I was for years. That evening, I went home and made myself a simple dinner: carrot soup and toast. That night, I played soft jazz and ate dinner without a single tear falling. I didn't have a big house anymore. I didn't have a perfect husband or empty promises, but I had a bright little apartment, a steady job, a sister who always had my back, and myself, slowly finding solid ground again, one step at a time. I had no idea what happened on the 12th floor that Monday morning, but by Wednesday afternoon things began to unravel. I received a message from a coworker along with a TikTok link. I clicked on it. Aurora. She was sitting in the living room of a very familiar apartment, the one in East Village I had seen on the receipts. No more glamorous dresses or glowing lights. She wore a gray hoodie, hair tied back, no makeup. I once dated a man 15 years older than me. He told me he was divorced, successful, honest, but I later realized I was just a part of something much bigger. The video was under 2 minutes. Aurora didn't name names, but the blurred invoices, screenshots of emails, and banking messages all clearly showed Tyler C. I sat frozen. She spoke about how Tyler used his company card to pay for the apartment, how he lied about being in the middle of a divorce, and the endless promises, buying her a car, opening a joint gym, taking her to Cancun. As soon as things were finalized, the TikTok spread like wildfire. By the next morning it had more than 40,000 likes and hundreds of comments, many from women sharing similar stories. I wasn't sure if Aurora had intended it to go viral, but the impact was undeniable. Less than a week later, Tyler was fired from Axis Financial. The news reached even the 6th floor. I overheard 2 employees whispering in the elevator. He was padding expense reports for nearly a year. He even had bills from a Japanese restaurant and a resort in Wisconsin. The company never approved them. Management suspected something but didn't have proof. Now they do. I didn't join the conversation. I just listened, quietly remembering every word. That night, while updating files with my attorney Clara, I received a message from an unknown number. Lily, can we talk for a moment? Things are spiraling out of control. I didn't reply. The next morning, I checked my personal email and saw a new message. From Aurora. I'm not sending this to apologize. I just want you to know, I was lied to too. I'm not a good person, but I don't want to keep being used. You should see the attached file. It was a folder of screenshots. Messages between her and Tyler, filled with promises of a new car, end-of-month transfers and subtle threats when she questioned him. One message stood out. Just don't tell the ex-wife anything. Everything will stay the same. I've got it under control. I immediately forwarded everything to Clara. She called back almost instantly. Lily, this is evidence of him manipulating a witness and concealing assets during divorce proceedings. We can expand the case. I didn't feel triumphant, not smug, but I saw clearly now. The wheels of justice had started turning. 3 days later, I was standing in line at the pharmacy when I saw Tyler. He was wearing an old hoodie, face unshaven, scrolling through his phone nonstop. He spotted me, froze for a second, then quickly looked away, not a word. Aurora was no longer with him. I'd heard from one of his former co-workers that she'd moved out of the East Village apartment and gone back to live with her parents in Urbandale. I returned to my work without caring about the stairs anymore. Gradually, I became someone Ben trusted with managing internal records. Every time I opened a spreadsheet or audited a report, I felt grateful, because I had learned how to face the truth, no matter how painful. And strangely enough, the very things Tyler used to say I'd never be able to do, managing finances, understanding systems, making independent decisions, were now the things holding me up strongest. News of Tyler's firing spread quickly throughout Des Moines, especially within the insurance circles. Axis Financial didn't hold a press conference or release an official statement, but everyone understood what had happened. During office lunch breaks, I started hearing things like, he had to turn in both his company card and laptop that same morning. That brand new Tesla he flaunted on LinkedIn, it's sitting in the bank's repossession lot now. Where's he staying now, that old motel off Highway 35? I didn't comment. But I listened and remembered everything. One Friday afternoon, while walking out of the grocery store near my new rental, I spotted a familiar silver-gray Tesla parked across the street, right in front of the Sunview Motel, well known as temporary housing for people who'd been evicted or were waiting for relocation. The license plate was dusty, and the front tire was completely flat. I crossed the parking lot and pretended to enter the Dunkin' Donuts next door. I sat by the window. About 10 minutes later, a tow truck pulled in. 2 workers in reflective vests got out, spoke briefly with the motel manager, then quickly hooked chains onto the Tesla. Right then, Tyler walked out. His shirt was wrinkled, he clutched a greasy paper bag of food, and his hair looked like it hadn't been washed in days. He rushed over and said something, but the workers just shook their heads and handed him a paper. I couldn't hear the exchange, but I didn't need to. Minutes later, Tyler's prized car was towed away, leaving him standing alone in the parking lot, dazed, still holding that crumpled paper bag. About 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from Katie, Tyler's younger sister. Her voice was soft, hesitant. I know I shouldn't be calling, but there's something you should know. I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. Tyler went back to our parents' house last weekend. He said he'd been tricked, needed money to start over. But when they asked for details, he lost it, started yelling, then stormed out. Afterward, Dad locked the door and said he wasn't helping anymore. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. After all, they were still his family. I didn't wish them harm, but they had played a part in keeping me silent all those years. Katie continued, I just want to say I'm sorry for not siding with you sooner. I always thought you were the reason Tyler changed, but now I know you were the only one trying to keep everything together. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't feel anger or forgiveness, just a sense that everything was finally falling into place. Later that month, I went to the bank to finalize the separation of our joint loan account. The banker was the same woman who had helped me open my new account months earlier. When I approached the counter, she smiled and handed me a document. "Congratulations, your financial records are now completely in your name." I signed. My hand didn't shake like it did the first time I came in. On my way home, I stopped by a small bookstore at the end of the street, the same place where Tyler and I had our first date. The shop was still peaceful as ever, but I was not the same. I picked out a personal finance book with a deep blue cover and told myself, from now on, every number in my life, I'll calculate it myself. A few days later, Rachel sent me a short video clip. In it, Tyler was speaking with a security guard outside the old building where he used to work. He looked desperate, explaining something animatedly while the guard simply shook his head. That image quickly became the subject of a few anonymous posts in a local Facebook group. The man who used to brag about being rich can't even get past the lobby now. The comments were filled with sarcasm. Some referenced the Tesla being towed from the motel. One person called him the guy who sold dreams on a company credit card. Tyler once told me I was plain, that I'd disappear without him. Yet now, he's the one who vanished. No home, no car, no one by his side. And me? Even in my little studio apartment, I had a steady job, friends, family, and most importantly, I had myself back. My new life didn't begin with grand milestones, but with small tasks I once thought I couldn't do. I learned how to mount wall shelves with a power drill, slightly crooked, but sturdy. I learned how to replace the AC filter every season, which screws to buy for different wall types. I even learned how to build a monthly budget using Google Sheets, the same thing Tyler used to mock as too complicated for you. Each evening I cooked for myself. Nothing fancy, just brown rice, steamed vegetables, or scrambled eggs with quinoa. But unlike the rushed meals I once made to please someone else, these dinners had soft jazz, scented candles, and a silence that used to scare me, but now felt sacred. On weekends, I walked to the supermarket and carried groceries back myself. I picked new curtains for my apartment, looked up LED codes online, and learned how to flip the breaker when needed. And that night, I slept soundly. No jolts, no nightmares, just deep, steady rest. One Saturday afternoon, just after I finished a Pilates workout on YouTube, Rachel called me, giggling. "Have you thought about getting a gym membership? There's a Planet Fitness near your place. I just signed up yesterday. Come with me." I hesitated, but eventually agreed. Exercise wasn't just good for my health. It helped clear my mind. The next day, I went to the gym. The smell of sweat and the noise of treadmills weren't pleasant at first, but something about it made me feel at ease. No one looked at me like I didn't belong. No one judged how I moved. I was walking on the treadmill when the front door opened. A man walked in, wearing a black t-shirt and holding a water bottle with chipped paint. It was Tyler. I almost didn't recognize him, if not for his familiar walk and the same pair of performance running shoes he once bragged about. He saw me. We both stood still for about 2 seconds. He looked like he wanted to walk over but stopped. "Hey, Lily." His voice was low, missing the confidence it once had. I took out one earbud and tilted my head slightly. "Oh, hey." No smile, no anger, just a calm look. Tyler gave a weak smile, scratched his head, searching for something to hold on to. "Ha, you look healthier than before." "Thanks. I'm doing well." He nodded, then looked down at the floor, not knowing what to do with his awkward hands. I turned back to the machine, saying nothing more. For the first time, I didn't feel pain seeing him. No lump in my throat, no racing heart. He just looked like someone I used to know. Someone who had once walked beside me but got lost along the way. That night, I sat in my small kitchen, holding a cookbook, occasionally glancing at the bubbling pot of vegetable soup. Outside the window, snow was falling gently. On the table was the finalized divorce decree from Clara's office, along with the official asset division documents. I had already signed them. The bank account was in my name only, the rental lease under me. Nothing left to tie us together. I picked up a pen and wrote a few lines on a sticky note I placed on the fridge. Things I've managed to do on my own this past year. Open a bank account. Cook 5 meals without burning them. Change the Wi-Fi password. Assemble a bookshelf. I go to the gym. Sleep through the night. I stuck it on the fridge, stared at it for a while, then smiled. Not a grand victory, but a real life, and it was mine. The last weeks of spring passed gently. I no longer checked my phone every morning like I used to. No longer held my breath when I got a message from an unknown number. But Tyler hadn't stopped trying. At first it was a short email. "I know I messed up, can we talk?" I didn't reply. Then he moved to Instagram, creating a new account just to message. "Are you doing okay? I just want to make sure you're all right." One night he sent a long message like he was trying to pull me back using familiar old lines. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, I just want to know if there's still a chance. You used to mean everything to me, Lily." I read it, then hit mark as read. No reply. I used to think the day Tyler came back begging would be the most satisfying day of my life. But it wasn't. When it finally happened, I didn't feel victorious, I didn't feel smug. I just felt distant. The man trying to come back wasn't the man I had shared 15 years with. He was a stranger, drowning in the wreckage he created. And me? I was learning how to truly live, for real. One small, but steady step at a time. In June, I received a notice from the company. I was getting a raise to $21 an hour. Not huge, but enough to move out of my attic studio and rent a one-bedroom apartment with a little balcony overlooking Grayslake Park. I rented a moving truck myself, carried every box of books and dishes on my own. Rachel offered to help, but I told her, this time I wanted to do it alone. After I finished assembling an old walnut desk I bought off Facebook Marketplace, I made myself a cup of hot tea, opened the window and sat watching the sunset paint the sky gold. No one rushed me, no one complained if I forgot the sugar, no voice blamed me or tore me down. Only birdsong, the smell of tea, and the quiet, steady beat of my heart, peaceful and strong. On Monday morning, I went to the bank to deposit my first paycheck after the raise. Same branch, same teller. Angela, the one who had helped me open my personal account the day I left my old home. She smiled when she saw me. This time, I wasn't wearing my worn-out shirt, but a clean cream linen dress. "You look brighter these days, Lily." I nodded, handed her the check. My hands no longer trembled. While I waited, I glanced at the financial bulletin board beside me. Same charts, same savings offers, but my feelings were different. Back then, when I first came here, I thought I was just surviving, like life was on pause, waiting for someone to hand me back my old role. But now, I knew. I wasn't waiting anymore. I didn't want to go back. I was living my own life. On the way home, I stopped by the farmer's market at the end of the street. Picked up a few bunches of greens, some red apples, and a small jar of raw honey. When I got back, I turned on the kitchen light, played some soft jazz, and started preparing dinner. Outside the kitchen window, the evening light fell gently. I placed the pot of soup on the stove, turned down the heat, then walked back to my desk and pulled out the old sticky note. Things I've managed to do on my own this past year. I picked up a pen and added a new line. Depositing my first paycheck, earned by my own hands, into a home that's truly mine. I stuck the note back on the fridge, looked at it, and smiled without meaning to. No apology from Tyler could ever make me turn around. No promise could erase what it took for me to rise again. The happiest moment didn't come from watching someone else fall. It came when I sat in my little kitchen, cooking in silence, and knowing deep down, I no longer belonged to the past. And finally, I had returned to myself. Whole, independent, and free. Lily's story is proof that loss doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of freedom and growth. When betrayed, she didn't crumble. She quietly rose, rebuilding her life from the smallest things. No loud revenge, no flashy success. The most precious thing Lily reclaimed was her self-respect, her peace, and her right to own her life. Something no one can take from her again. What do you think about Lily's journey? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family life stories to come.